looks like I have technical difficulties, Jake.
The hell, Josh?
It says my camera was unplugged.
Fine, I'm taking over. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of CADclass podcast. That's Josh, and I'm Jake, the one with the working camera who's prepared. This week is going to be a little bit different, not just because I'm the only beautiful face that you can see, but because this entire weekend we've been up in San Francisco at the Open Source Live convention for year 2. And it was really wild and really exhausting, but it was absolutely fantastic. There we go. There's a beautiful face.
I'm getting an echo. Is anybody else in the chat getting an echo from
me? No, that's fine. Anyway, so this is going to be a full episode all about the rad, the weird, and the wonderful that we saw at Open Source, and really all of the energy and the vibes that we got. And for anyone who has been to the Open Source on year 1 that was up in San Francisco as well on the docks, very, very, very different energy. Oh, Josh is gone. There we go. This is going to be a really kind of deep dive discussion into all of these conventions, all of the energies that come into it, and all the people that kind of make it happen. We saw, good Lord, I think hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who were bringing designs that they'd either made on the scratch or they had been working on for years, obviously. And it was a really, really, really beautiful example of making and kind of bringing the community together. So really quick intro. For anyone that doesn't know, Open Source Live is the... Hey, man. Open Source Live is the convention that was created by William Osman, one of the most famous YouTube makers. He's been doing crazy, just ridiculous stuff for ages. He's a mechanical and electrical engineer. I believe he used to work for NASA as well, but for only like a couple months. But he's been making just really, really fantastic, just fun projects. Not technologically amazing, but incredibly accessible media that kind of let me feel okay not making the biggest and most complicated thing I could possibly make. Sometimes the stuff that you make can just be ridiculous and silly and fun, and that is one of the most comforting things that I think we get to hear in making. Like, obviously when you go on social media, whether it be YouTube or Instagram, people are posting the biggest and best stuff that they've made. It's very rare that people are posting, oh, I just made this very simple, small little thing. And it does kind of dig into people where they go, oh gosh, I need to be making something huge, or I can't make any mistakes, or I can't really get into a new field because everything that I make is going to be random and terrible. And it really isn't. All of his channel is just either terrible fails or just random creative stuff, and it always felt really good. And so last year, his advertisement for this is, I'm going to be bringing all of the makers of YouTube that everyone loves to see and bring into one convention hall. And it's going to be an area where people can show off all of their best stuff. So if you're in the YouTube maker community, you had people like Alan Pan, Mark Rober, Unnecessary Inventions, JBV Creative, Adam Savage, oh my god, Michael Reeves. Basically everyone that you can think of that has added and contributed to the maker movement on YouTube was at that convention and came back this year as well. So it was a ton of fun, but very, very different vibes. The first year was the first time they ever put on a convention, which I have never done. I'm going to assume it's incredibly difficult. And it was all about really, really edgy, high-octane energy. But this year felt a little bit different. Is that a fairly good assessment, Josh?
I think that is a fairly good assessment. Did you quickly do some housekeeping and say hello?
No, not yet. But your audio's all messed up.
My audio's messed up?
Yeah, it's not going through your lovely, lovely, expensive microphone.
Wow.
I'll do a little bit of housekeeping in the meantime. Sounds all right. There we go.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? It was actually going through the camera.
I know. Yeah, it was picking up all kinds of echo.
It wasn't even going through my MacBook Air, which is like acceptable quality. So it was going directly through the Sony camera. Wow.
Oh, I
Wow.
bet.
Technical difficulties. That was impressive.
Fantastic.
That was a
We're
great.
very professional. Do you know it's ridiculous? We're coming up to our 50th episode, almost
can't
a
believe it.
year of doing this, and we still, like, oh god.
We're still amateurs.
We wanted to shout out Cadence for being here damn near every single week. Okay.
Just every morning, she says hi. PC Van Vliet, Sam, Spitfire, printed by John. It is good
Thank you
to
guys
see.
so much for joining us.
It is good to see you.
Yeah, seeing is always very, very strange.
It's good to have a one-way conversation with you.
I know. Speaking of seeing and one-way conversations, we actually met up and saw a bunch of people that we have had YouTube relationships for the first time, which was really, really weird. First off, we were just walking around the convention hall. We're not big enough to have a booth or to be creative. Oh, the featured creators, which is fine. We've only been doing YouTube for a little bit now. But we got to run into a bunch of people that we knew very, very casually. They just kind of walk by and go, "Hey, that's how to make everything. Oh my god, that's how to make stuff." And it's really, really bizarre and wonderful. But we got to finally meet the 3D printing general, which was fantastic. He's the one who wrote a little blurb on the back of our book. Had a massive shout out. He is still, or he made a video a fair few months ago where he went through our entire book on Fusion program in a week, and he is still to this day the fastest person to complete our entire program, which was insane. And helped us out a ton with sales. So we always love chatting about him. But his YouTube channel got taken away for some reasons that I'm sure you guys know about in the community. And he's currently working with Polymaker, which is a very, very, very popular 3D printing filament company that makes super duper high quality stuff, but they get to show off working with makers, which is always really rad. And we're just kind of walking around, and I see the Polymaker booth, and I look over, and Sean's there going, "Oh, hey, Jake," and for like a brief second, I was like, "Oh, hey, Sean, hey, what's going on, man?" And it was really, really funny. It was just bizarre because it's like, well, we've been chatting with each other for years at this point. We've been on his podcast, but outside of that, because we're in California and he's in Texas, never ever met. And it's really, really funny doing that kind of, having that kind of relationship on YouTube or on social media.
I want to mention a couple of things about that to our community specifically. If it weren't for the 3D print in general, I don't think we would have given our book away for free.
No.
I want to go back a little bit to the backstory of meeting him. So we decided, Jake, it's hard to believe this, but almost 3 years ago now, we originally decided that we were going to try to write a book. And one of the things I like to do when I'm taking on a new project is to find people in that industry who have done it before and just have a little conversation. What would you recommend? How do I get started? Just trying to get the lay of the land a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I emailed 3D Print General, cold email. I just told him what we were working on. Said, we saw your book. It's doing really well. It was doing well at the time. It's called 3D Printing Failures. It's called 3D Printing Failures. Yep. He's doing really, really well. But so I had reached out to him, just cold email, and within 2 minutes, he responded. 2 minutes. Apparently he just happened to be checking his email at exactly the time that I emailed him. Answered all my questions, was extremely friendly. I said, "Hey, do you mind? I would love to hop on a quick call if that's something you'd be up for, and just kind of pick your brain a little bit about what it takes to publish a book and what your experience was like." One of the first things he told me was the best thing he ever did with his book was give it away as a PDF when somebody emailed him with the physical copy. So he had this thing where if you had the physical copy and you sent him an email, he would manually email you the PDF. And that always stuck in my brain as just rad and interesting and yeah, useful. And he said it was
a little sign of goodwill.
He said it was the best thing that he had done for his book. It was how he managed to get so many reviews. All these things came to light. So Jake, from that moment forward, I think the seed was planted. And I decided we have to figure out a way to give this away to our community. And I kind of mulled over the idea that maybe we do what he does, which is if you buy the physical copy, we'll give you the PDF. And that evolved over time into what I'm sure many of you in our community have done, which is download the free ebook and or donation-based ebook. that evolved into that idea where I said, why should we limit just people who bought the book on Amazon? Why don't we go a little crazier and just give it away? And Jake, I know we've talked about this in the pod a lot, so I don't want to go over it a ton here, but I know that you were a little bit resistant to that idea in the beginning. You thought, we just spent more time on this than maybe anything we've ever done in our life. Why are we going to give it away for free? Are you
spent like a year and a half, 2 years making this?
Right. It's like, are you out of your mind? A year and a half, 2.5 years making the book after the 6 years it took us to learn what we needed to learn to actually do the thing. So it's like, are you out of your mind? What kind of crazy person does this? And I think you're right? That it is a crazy idea. It is a crazy thing. But if it weren't for the 3D Print General, and if it weren't for that initial seed of the idea, I don't think we would have given our book away for free. I don't think we would have thought about this whole PDF side of things. And so huge shout out for that and many more reasons. And now I found out something else interesting. I don't know if you heard this at the conventions. This might be new to you, Jake, but we happen to be hanging around the HueForge guys. Big shout out to HueForge. So if you haven't played around with HueForge, it is a filament painting software is the best way I can describe it. It allows you to turn images into 3D printed, textured, for lack of a better word, paintings.
Pictures. I think most people in the 3D printing community know what a lithophane is. It's the idea that you can 3D print a picture with usually white filament, and it varies the thickness of the filament based on the darkness or lightness of that pixel in the image. And it just gives you like this really crazy cratered surface. But then when you hold it up to the light, obviously the thinner filament lets more light through. The thicker filament doesn't let as much light through. And so you essentially develop a negative of a photo. And it works amazingly. It works way better than anyone expects. So this is a different idea.
It's
printing vertical.
No, but it's actually, here's the interesting thing. It's not that different. So they take the luminance, they figure out how much light actually transmits through each different color of filament in order to figure out how much to put down of what color. So it actually is kind of like a lithophane, but just with standard light. You don't have to backlight it. And some of the colors, because of the way the light shines through the colors, it comes out looking like a full color print. But it has a lot to do with that same luminance, just not backlit in the same way. So that blew my mind, but that's not the reason I wanted to mention this. The reason I wanted to mention this is because I found out something interesting. So both HueForge and Polymaker have shared and do share actively our book with their communities. So that is one of the distribution channels. I didn't know that either. And the guy that I was talking to at the booth recognized our book. He didn't recognize us, but he said, "Oh, do you guys give a book away for free on Fusion?" And we said, yeah, we actually, we do that. He said, "Oh my God, oh, thank you so much." He said, "I haven't had a chance to do anything with it yet," which is classic, right? I haven't actually worked through it. There's the guilt factor. People go, "Oh, it's wonderful that you do that. It's so amazing. I downloaded the book. I have it. I've heard it's good." "Oh, how far are you? What project are you on?" "Oh, yeah. Well, I like the idea of it. I haven't actually done anything with it." So, but I found out, that's one of our communities. And I found out a couple more of those, by the way. Brandon, he's in some private Discords where they do robotics and drone stuff. And apparently they share it all the time. So that's the reason I wanted to mention that. So Polymaker shares it, HueForge shares it. Polymaker and HueForge have a collaboration. So if you decide to purchase HueForge, the software, they give you a coupon for exactly that amount of money for Polymaker. So we have an $18 Polymaker coupon where we can buy some Polymaker filament with it. So it's this interesting, like, well, if you're going to buy filament anyway, you may as well, when you buy the software, go ahead and use that coupon to buy your filament.
And that's almost like a full kilogram for free as well.
It is basically a full kilogram for free.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I didn't know that. Okay.
That was super rad to discover all of that. And if
I think it's kind of a good lead into a little bit more of the conversation about open source in general. And so we're chatting with the guy at HueForge who essentially developed this software, this program, which is fantastically complicated. What, like color theory, if you actually ever want to study color theory, you'll find that it is a rabbit hole of obscenely hard to understand concepts that involves the biology of the human eye, brain receptors, chemistry, light physics, how deceptive the human brain can be, a human's evolutionary perseverance more towards green and different natural colors and fear of bright colors, which influences how we feel and our emotions. It is so unbelievably complicated, and then it mixes with like technology and like how pixels work and screens and ink, and it's really fascinating, and it's such a weird deep dive that if you ever want to spend like a semester studying it at like a community college, I highly recommend it, because it is so much weirder than it seems to be. It seems easy, and it is completely not. And they sell the software for like $20. $20. And apparently a lot of people were coming up to them and saying, "Oh, is it free? Is it open source?" And they unfortunately have to go, "No, unfortunately we have to sell it because it took us years to develop and we're still developing, and we need to kind of eat." And it kind of brought into one of the that was essentially for me a little microcosm of what open source was. So the whole point of the convention is that it is a YouTuber convention. The entire audience of people going there so they can meet all their favorite YouTubers and see all these crazy creations that they have. They have a little YouTuber museum where people would bring in their projects. And you kind of got to see it in real life and go, "Oh my God, that's way bigger than I thought. That looks actually way more dangerous than the video implies." All this good stuff. And it was really, really fantastic to kind of go through the psychology of this convention, because we've been to a bunch of different maker conventions and they all operate very, very differently. So the whole point of a lot of these convention halls that are certain makers is that the people at the booths can sell something, and the people who are attending it completely recognize that, and they're usually there to buy stuff. So I was in the special effects movie makeup community for a long, long time. And there's a very, very popular convention called Monsterpalooza, where every single special effects person that you can imagine is there, and they're showcasing all their new designs. And there's all different companies that are selling, "Oh, this is the latest, greatest makeup palettes," or "Oh, this is fireproof filament for all of your action scenes," or whatever. And all the people that are going there, they're looking to pick up some stuff. So there's a lot of deals going on. And so the convention hall can sell these booths for thousands of dollars. "Oh, you want a booth to sell your product? Well, that's going to cost a pretty penny." And they know they're going to be making it back and even more profit on top of that. That's just kind of recognize. The flip side of this is that open source is filled with a community who are on YouTube and they're getting all of content for free. And so there's this predisposition. They are going there. I mean, they paid for a ticket, obviously, but they're going there and they are wanting all of this stuff for free because that is the culture that they came into. Does that feel about right, Josh?
I think not just wanting things for free. I think the frame that I have is people aren't there displaying what they're making in order to sell it. They did it for the most part at this convention only because they're interested in doing it. So most of the stuff you see at Open Source is just so wacky.
It's
weird,
ridiculous.
It's musical. What the heck is that? There's very
robotic
little sales. Yeah. You and I were talking about, okay, this is going to sound crass, but how do you monetize a community of folks who just want to show off wacky stuff?
Yeah.
And so what they're trying to do is bring more industry in to who that community probably buys their stuff from, like PCBWay, like Prusa, like CookieCAD, shout out Prusa, awesome shirts.
Thanks for the swag.
Thanks, Pooch. But yeah, so they're bringing in the people who this community is likely to buy from, but at the same time, not very much of this stuff is actually designed to sell. So the question becomes, well, who do you bring in, and how much are they willing to pay if most of this community here are, like, to your point, are trying to get things a little bit cheaper or for free or not willing to spend all that much money? And it remains to be seen, but I would say that I think some of that initial just creator energy was diffused by having the commercial aspect kind of smushing in there. And my prediction is that over the years, of course, the creators will continue to come. That will be amazing, but there will increasingly be more sales related, company related, organizational related, and maybe even we'll have our booth at some point. We don't know yet if we'll do it, but I think that's the that's the frame I would go with. Is
yeah,
it's not exactly designed to buy and sell.
Yeah, the first year it felt so good. The energy there was absolutely amazing. It was edgy. It was funny. It was fantastic. And I think there was 5 companies there that were selling things. So there was 3D Gloop that sells 3D printing adhesives. There was Amaran that sells lighting equipment and camera equipment for YouTubers, where it's super duper high quality, but very, very accessible to a small person. And there was a few more that felt very fitting, but that's about it. For the most part, it was creators that were bringing bizarre, weird, and wild projects that felt so fantastic. And it was funny. It was so fantastic. If you know anything about William Osman, you know that the beginning of his channel was that he built I think it was like 100-watt laser, or maybe even stronger. I think it was even more powerful. And he used to do laser cutting experiments. So, can I cut meat? Can I make a hot dog? And then can I make ridiculously bizarre things with it? And it turned, and then we found out months later, his house burnt down. It burnt to a crisp. And not because of his laser, but because of a sweeping brush fire that we had in California not long ago. And it was super duper sad, and he was depressed, and he was having to live in a motor car for like a year. And it was funky, and he was saying, because of our amazing community, we were able to, gather some donations and essentially build my life back up from the ashes. And it was fantastic. It felt really good to be from the community. It felt great to donate to someone who I absolutely love watching their content. And at the convention hall, obviously, it's a building. There's fire extinguishers on the wall. And below all the fire extinguishers were like 20 fire extinguishers. And it was amazing. And it felt like such a great in-joke that everybody walked by just kind of giggled at. And it was fantastic. And then this time the energy just felt very different. It felt a little commercial, and I didn't feel that edge. And what I'm hoping is that they kind of recognize that, and there's some balance. Like in first open source, they had a gigantic Among Us inflatable statue with a huge ass. And it wasn't here last time. And I was kind of looking around going, but where would it be? Like, where else could it possibly be? I don't know. Last year, the cantina, where everyone was eating food, was on a warship that was docked right next to us. And it was bizarre and funny, and it was very YouTuber. And we know some stuff about the behind the scenes that was going on this year, because we've got quite a few friends that are either creators or had booths there, and they were all saying that it was very weird, very wacky. And what it like one of the after dinner parties, they said, let's invite all the YouTubers, and all the people that started the convention said, yeah, you guys want to be to this dinner. And they walk in, and there was the most bizarre decorations in this cornered off area, like blow up eggs and black velvet and pipes and maize and weird bizarre stuff. And then it turns out the party was an IPO,
some sort of AI. Not an IPO, some sort of AI launch party where they were doing.
Yeah, it was a launch party.
Yeah. So IPO would be
very
initial
strange.
public offering. That'd be like the company's going public. So not IPO, just like a little launch party. But yeah, it sounds like they just invited the creators to a private launch party they didn't know they were going to. And apparently at the end of it was black tie, and a lot of these creators are creators, and so we're wearing t-shirts and shorts, and we're disheveled, and they're walking in. It's progressively getting more and more formal, and they're going, this isn't for us. So I think you're right. I think the vibe was definitely quite a bit different. Still very, very enjoyable. We loved also seeing big shout out to Dorian and Colin, who were with Placer Robotics, which is a local company here. We did the Roseville Rising program with them. They have their own booth. Dorian was able to show off his guitar, and he's got this LED guitar he built in a week while he was on break. and he doesn't know how to play the
Which
guitar.
is
He left
so
it at his
amazing.
booth the entire time, and he said that he must have had 100 people come and play this guitar, and that was one of the most enjoyable things to him. Was just watching.
And we were
people
there, and
interact
we
with his
saw
art.
so many of the people, and they were just shredding, and it was amazing.
Shredding, and they're like, "Hey, you built this car. Do you know how to play guitar?" And he's like, "No, I don't know how to do this at all." I saw him sit down and try to strum it at some point. It was just as good as you can imagine. It was. Yeah.
I can't play the guitar, and I was like, dude, you're well ahead of me.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of mulling it over. It was a bit of a philosophy session for Josh and I the whole weekend, and it was, well, we do run a business. I would love to do YouTube 100% all the time, but it's slightly different vibes. Like one of the creators is Michael Reeves, who I think every maker kind of has a soft spot for loving. And he makes projects like, I built a robot dog that pisses beer, or I made a spawn of drones to come and attack people. It's like, that's amazing. That's rad engineering. That's tricky coding, and that's perfect. And there's no way that we could do that and still have our kind of reputation to work with schools and kids. It's like it just doesn't work for us. And as we were kind of hanging out with Dorian and all of our students that were there, it kind of came into it that this is a physicality of one of our favorite things that we've ever done, and that's making the I Made a Thing forum. It is, to this day, still one of the best things that I think we've done, is allowing you guys and seeing all of you guys' projects that you are making, saying, oh, I couldn't make this without your course, your book, which is obviously incredibly kind thing to say. But we kind of know that we're just kind of ushering you guys along, and you working on your own projects is developing far more skill sets than we could ever teach you, and showing off all the things that you guys are designing for fun or for functionality or potentially making a business. That warms my soul. Yeah. It's my favorite thing to see by a long shot. And going up and seeing this booth here was just, it felt like a physicality of this. And so I'm not sure I want a booth there, because I don't want to add to the commercialism of that place. Maybe if we made a really bizarre random project that was like, hey, we also have a book, but this is mainly just this kick-ass project, I think that's more the vibes that I would want to see. But I think we a value of success for us, in the same way as seeing all you guys' projects on the I Made a Thing forum, is having our students have a booth there.
So you guys listening to the podcast, this is our call to action to you. Make something amazing that you can show off at Open Sauce next year, and we would love to support, shout you out, do whatever we can to help you make that happen, because that's exactly the point, Jake. I think you nailed it. Is we want to help you bring your ideas to life. We don't want this to be CADclass brings CADclass ideas to life. Well, we do want that, because that's fun too. But but the ultimate goal here is that we share what you do. So if you've got ideas, if you've got projects, especially if they're weird and wacky, especially the weirder and the wackier, the better. If you've got those ideas, get them in early to Open Sauce. Put a submission in there. I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe when you're a maker at Open Sauce, the booth is free.
It's either free or very low or relatively low cost.
I think it's free for the creators who are not selling something. I could be wrong there. I should probably just reach out to Dorian and ask him. But I think as long as you're accepted, it's completely free. So that would be so rad.
Yeah. And the people that are there, people that haven't been to Open Source, it isn't about big, amazing random projects. There are absolutely people that went there. There was a guy, oh my gosh, I'm subscribed to him. I can't remember his name. But he made a robot dog and then cladded it in fur and made it into a robot four-legged furry. No, what is it called? No, that's a lie. Furby. There we go.
Furby.
There were two furries walking around. It was very creepy, but he made it into a four-legged walking Furby, and it was creepy and amazing and bizarre. And I'm like, that would take me a year to build. But then right next to him was people that had made a robot walk, and it was just a massive red button that you clicked, and then there was a pneumatic arm that was meant to be kind of, people that make like fried rice in a wok, but it just went ting, 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 and it was just firing rice everywhere, and it was hilarious. It was bizarre. The booth next to them, very pissed off, but it was absolutely amazing. It was bizarre. And then down the hall, there was a music aisle. The people that were just 3D printing or inventing new types of electronic, bizarre instruments out of trash, and it was great. And there was a guy that just made this huge cycloid ring with mathematically angled wires, and it was literally just like a rotation screen that made a bubble, and then he just went, and it just made a bubble. That was his booth. I'm sure it probably took a weekend or two to build, but it was so simple, so cool, and fun.
Loved. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And it was no, and that was it. And I've got 1,000 other examples of that. There was a group of kids that made long pong. It was the very simple pong game, but they made it about the screen about that tall, but about 8 feet wide. And it was hysterical because the controls were just bizarre.
You just couldn't. You couldn't figure out how to work the controls.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
I loved the beer keg rocket.
Yes,
the mini beer keg rocket, which by the way was really well done. It was stunning to look at this thing. Like you wouldn't imagine that it's so good, but I was looking at the hardware on it, and they're still working on it. They said they're about 2 years from launch, but they are going to launch this thing, and it was a serious endeavor. Love that. What about the Cookie CAD booth?
The Cookie CAD booth is something very, very interesting. It's something that you guys need to keep an eye on. If you consider yourselves a baker at all, a baker maker, then you need to check out Cookie CAD. The whole point of the booth is that...
by the way, shout out to our own book, Mastering Tinkercad, where we actually teach you also how to make a cookie CAD.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. No.
So both. But Cookie CAD is awesome.
No, don't want to plug us. I want to plug Cookie CAD.
Yeah.
And it is essentially a very, very simple software, a very simple CAD software, which is great for kids, where you could just draw whatever shape you want, or you can import an image, and then it just kind of automatically makes a cookie cutter that's 3D printable. And the story that went into it, I told this to my fiance, and she was absolutely cackling because it's something that I would do. Apparently, the guy that actually made the software, his wife is a baker who kept on making all these custom cookies and didn't know how to use a 3D printer. Said, I'll never use that. And would constantly ask him every single weekend, can you make me this cookie cutter of a bird, or of this special Christmas tree, or of this person's face, or this and that. And he got so busy and so tired that he said, I'm just going to make a program. I'm just going to write a software that you could just use so I don't have to do it.
Yep.
Which is the most engineering approach. I'm going to spend months working on a software so that I don't have to spend minutes 3D printing design.
But I'm actually not talking about the company itself. I'm talking about the game.
The game. So it's not just cookie cutter. They had a bunch of different applications, like, I want to press into clay or kinetic sand. Cool, but okay. And they had a booth that was essentially a giant game of perfection that exploded pieces onto people with 2 pneumatic pistons. If you don't remember the game, I think it's from the 90s, probably 80s to be honest. The idea is that you would push down this spring-loaded screen, set a timer, and you had a whole bag full of all of these individual plastic pieces that had to fit in the right location. And the ticker was so loud and it was so stressful that if you didn't get all the pieces in there in time, the screen would push out of place, and it would essentially launch all these plastic pieces at you. So stressful, and they essentially made it gigantic, but with all the bells and whistles, red lights glowing when it was 5 seconds less. I can't even imagine how many PSI were on this, but it would boom push this whole screen at you and fire all the pieces onto the ground. And it was loud, and it was violent, and it was amazing, and everyone would freak out and scream when it would go off. And it was happening like every 4 minutes. It was amazing. I tried it. I'm a little jumpy, and I was I screamed.
It got you properly freaked out.
Yeah,
I think the implementation of it was amazing because did you know they're all cookie cutters?
Yeah.
So the pieces that you put into the various shapes were actually the cookie cutters that they make. You and I talk a lot about how do we make our booths interesting and fun and relevant, and like that just nailed it for me. It's interactive. Yeah. It's attention grabbing. And by the way, I've seen it on Twitter afterwards that they've got photos with all the creators coming by to use it.
Yeah.
Right. So or videos or whatever. And so it's this amazing social shareability component. It's fun actually in the moment. It's relevant to what they actually do. I just thought they nailed that. It was so much fun.
It was perfect. And it was wonderful. It was so wonderful. And they were selling all of their filament that they do in like a little vending machine, which I completely forgot to grab some. But they had like 2 kilogram dumbbells that they were.
That was genius. Yeah,
it was just so fun. It was so fun. If you guys haven't been to open source, I highly recommend making a pilgrimage. Last year was in San Francisco. This year was in San Francisco. I imagine they're just going to be using it as a hub. But if you can, absolutely make it. There was people from all over the planet that came here. We heard every single accent under the roof. There was people from the UK, people from Ireland, people from Canada, people from Australia, people from New Zealand. I'm sure there's probably some people coming from South Africa, from farthest away point from San Francisco you can get. It was so wonderful, and there was such a buzz of creativity that I was taking notes every single second of the day. Oh my god, it'd be so funny to make a video about that. Oh, I want to make this. Oh, I want to make that. It was just amazing. The energy that you got out of there was absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. The networking from a business perspective was fine. But like the friends that we made there was just brilliant. It was absolutely fantastic.
What about our lunch on day one?
The lunch on day one. Oh my god, yeah. So they had a whole booth all about BattleBots. Very, very popular. William Osmond has actually bought one of them from the TV shows. These are gigantic, 250 pounds mean machines. They're usually funded by huge companies or universities. They cost tens of thousands of dollars to make. They are engineering marvels and just an engineering nerd dream. They are mean machines. But the show's been going on since the 90s. And combat robots, I think it happened a little bit before then, but RC cars in the 70s, or our remote control in the 70s, was expensive and bulky and it sucked. And so combat robotics really only came around, I think, in the 80s and the 90s. But there was a bunch of teams in the early days that are still driving today. Some of the most famous people in the sport that really propelled it are still making and upgrading and designing their parts. And so Josh and I were just grabbing some food one day, walking around the seating area. So busy, there's nowhere to seat. We see there's a picnic table and they're not using the left side, so we just go, hey guys, you guys mind if we just squeeze in there? They went, yeah, absolutely, come on in. By the way, everybody at open source was so nice and considerate. It was lovely. It was just such a nice energy. Yeah. And I'm eating a burrito, you're eating a Korean barbecue bowl, and the guys next to are just like, oh, you having a good time? Did you come here last year? What was your favorite thing? Being just incredibly nice. And I kind of look over around the corner, and it just didn't occur to me to look at their faces, but they were all of the original drivers from the BattleBot show. Oh my god! I've been watching you guys for decades at this point.
You pulled out your phone and texted me about who they were. Didn't even want to say anything because we were sitting right next to them. Dude, check it out. It's the OGs.
It's so funny, our relationship being there, because I know almost all of the people there, and I'm nerding out because I've been watching these guys on YouTube for decades, and you're just there going, oh, okay. Just not having the vibe. I didn't know this. Josh doesn't have that bit in his brain where he's starstruck, where he's intimidated by certain people. Which I totally am. I think most people are. We were having dinner the first night in a hotel, and all the creators were staying there as well. And so we were just kind of sitting there, having a burger, having some beers, and then Oh, Joseph Prush's walking by. Thomas Scott is walking by. Emily the engineer is walking by. Thomas Sandler
CNC
is
Kitchen
there.
was there. Thomas Sandler, yeah.
JBV Creative. All of them are just walking by, just grabbing beers. And I'm like, the entire time, like a little schoolboy. And Josh is just there going, oh, hey. Just that's it. It was terrifyingly awful. But it was just full of every single person you'd seen. And I think one of the reasons that I like open source over other conventions that we've been to is that I've been to quite a few movie-centric conventions, and obviously all the people there that are actors or directors or special effects people that are totally enamored in that field, they kind of recognize, oh, we're celebrities, we're movie stars, and with that comes a certain chip on the shoulder, which I get. But all of the YouTube creators, they still recognize I'm a YouTuber. You know, there's not a certain glamour that comes with it. There's a certain of down to earthedness. There's a certain realness that comes with it.
Down to earthedness. That's a good one.
Is that a good one? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just feels really good because at the end of the day, all the people that are there, they're still just makers. They were going around, walking on the floor, going to booths, and they were chatting with the creators or with the booth people as we would as well. We were hanging around. And there was a booth called Cursed Controllers, and the whole thing was how do we control games in the most awful way possible. So there was a guy that was running Minecraft on his smartwatch on a screen that was about that big. There was a guy that turned a pumpkin into a keyboard.
Yeah,
to control it like that, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It was hilarious, and the backyard scientist is there next to us, and he's just chatting with him. Oh, how'd you make this? How'd you come up with that? And not just like boring throwing off questions, like genuinely interested. Oh, what's your next project? How do you make this? How long did it do? And it was really lovely. And of course, they were getting bombarded with the people asking for pictures and autographs, and they were all incredibly nice and totally wanting to give that. But the energy from them was just, it was really, really beautiful. It was really nice.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. You and I left, I think, with our heads spinning about ideas. We thought of our booth and our value proposition and what we would make and the creativity. We want to make one of those clicker flap. What the heck are those boards called? Where
there's a proper name for it. It's like
they're
split flap board.
Split flap. It's because it's two different flaps that come out. It's like the old style airport flap boards.
Yeah.
So I've watched a handful of videos since coming home on those. I'm gonna make one.
I'm so hungry to make one.
So enjoyable. They have that perfect noise.
Yes.
That just it's such a satisfying sound.
Yeah.
And the board itself is satisfying. So we're gonna make one of those. We came out just buzzing 100%. With ideas, which is a business's worst nightmare. We have too many ideas, Jake.
That's completely true. I've counted it up. If we made one of these projects every 2 weeks, we would have enough content for, I think, like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't have time. No. I would love to have time for that. Don't have time for that. Totally. So until then, the business is going to keep on pushing until I can do YouTube full time. That'd be great.
Speaking of which, Jake, I think we need to get busy on our book. We've promised our community a book. So I have nothing else major to say today.
Me either. I think we're going to wrap it up at the 45-minute mark.
We're going to wrap it up at the 45-minute mark. But just as a reminder, please share your projects on I Made a Thing. We are going to share as many of your projects in our new book as possible. We want to highlight you. We're going to put you in there. We're going to call you out. We're going to help other people around the world understand they can do it too. Share your projects on I Made a Thing. We also got some good feedback coming in about some of the projects. Specifically, I believe it was the drumstick, one of the engineering drawings projects. So if you've got specific feedback, specific things you'd like to incorporate, let us know, or forever hold your peace, because you will not get another chance to do it. So on that note, Jake, this has been the CADclass podcast. Once again, I'm Josh.
I'm Jake.
And we will see you next week.
See you guys.